Your Ansible playbook just failed to parse Docker Compose, YML. The Docker Compose v2 module couldn't read your compose file. Let's break down Ansible Docker management, how it works, and the exact mistake behind that failure. The Community Docker collection is Ansible's official way to manage Docker resources. It provides modules like Docker Container, Docker Image, Docker Network, and Docker Volume that map directly to Docker API objects. Unlike running shell commands, these modules are idempotent. They check the current state and only make changes if needed. This solves the problem of ad hoc scripts that break on partial failures or drift. First, install the Community Docker collection using Ansible Galaxy. Always pin the version for production to avoid unexpected changes. On target hosts, you need the Docker Python software development kit. Let's look at the installation command. This command installs version 3.4.0 of the Community Docker collection. In production, always specify the version to ensure consistency across your infrastructure. The Docker Container module is the workhorse for managing containers. For production, use state, started to ensure the container is running, and set restart policy, unless stopped so it survives daemon restarts. The comparisons parameter tells the module which attributes to compare to detect changes. Here's a complete example of managing an Nginx container. Notice we specify the image, ports, environment variables, network, and volume. The module will create the container if it doesn't exist, or update it if something changed, but only if you set comparisons. The Docker Image module can build images from a Docker file. Use source, build and specify the build context path. Force source, yes, forces a rebuild even if the image exists. In production, you might set force source, no and only rebuild when code changes. This playbook builds an image and pushes it to a registry. Note the build path must be on the target host. If building on the control node, use delegate to, localhost, and ensure Docker is installed locally. For multi-container apps, you need networks. The Docker Network module creates and manages Docker networks. Always specify a subnet to avoid conflicts with existing networks. For Swarm, use driver, overlay, and ensure Swarm mode is active. This creates an overlay network named WebNet with a specific subnet. The attachable yes option allows standalone containers to attach, which is useful for debugging. Remember, networks are immutable after creation. If you need to change options, you must delete and recreate. Docker volumes provide persistent storage. The Docker Volume module can create local or network volumes. For shared storage across hosts, use NFS volumes with driver ops. Remember, volumes are immutable after creation. To change options, you must destroy and recreate. This creates a local bind mount volume. For NFS, you would set type, NFS, and provide the NFS server address. Always test volume creation with Docker Volume Create before using in production. The Community Docker Compose v2 module manages compose stacks natively. It's idempotent and integrates with Ansible's state model. However, it doesn't support all compose features like profiles. For complex stacks, fall back to the raw Docker Compose command. This playbook deploys a simple compose stack using the Docker Compose module. Note that the module compares the current state with desired state and skips if unchanged. For variable substitution, you need to set environment variables explicitly or template the compose file. Managing container lifecycle means handling creation, updates, restarts, and removal. Use state, started for normal operation, state, stop to pause, and state, absent to remove. Restart stops and starts the same container, while recreate destroys and creates a new one. Use handlers to restart only when configuration changes. This playbook demonstrates start, stop, and restart operations. Note that restart uses the same container, while to recreate you would set state, absent then state, started. For zero downtime, use blue-green deployments. To manage Docker with Ansible, you first need Docker installed on target hosts. Use Ansible to add the Docker repository, install Docker packages, and install the Docker Python software development kit. Always ensure the software development kit is installed after Docker. This playbook installs Docker on Ubuntu using apt, starts the service, and installs Docker Compose. For production, consider using the official Docker install script or a custom role. Always install the Docker Python software development kit with pip to avoid module failures. When deploying Compose stacks, first ensure required networks and volumes exist. Then deploy the stack using Docker, Compose v2, or raw Docker Compose. For variable substitution, either set environment variables explicitly or template the Compose file with Ansible. This playbook copies a Compose file to the target and deploys it. For production, consider using templates to inject variables. The Docker Compose module is idempotent and will skip if the stack is already up to date. For zero downtime deployments, use a blue-green pattern. Deploy a new container with the new image, verify it's healthy via health check, update the load balancer to point to the new container, then remove the old one. This avoids downtime. For swarm services, you can use the Docker Swarm Service module to perform rolling updates. The update config parameters control parallelism and delay. For standalone containers, implement blue-green manually. When pulling images from private registries, use Docker login to authenticate. Always set no log, yes on tasks that handle passwords or secrets. Use Ansible Vault to encrypt sensitive variables. For Swarm, you can use Docker Secret to manage secrets. This playbook creates a Docker secret from a file and logs into a private registry. Note the use of no-log is not shown here, but should be added. Always test with V to ensure secrets aren't leaked in logs. After deploying, verify containers are running using Docker Container Info. This module returns container details like image and state. Use it to decide whether to recreate containers, making your playbooks idempotent and fast. This playbook checks if the nginx container is running and healthy. Use Docker Container Info to avoid unnecessary container recreations. Compare container, image or container, state, started at to decide if an update is needed. This is the same issue we highlighted at the start. Here's exactly why that happened. The playbook used restart. Yes, but without the comparisons parameter, the module didn't detect that the configuration had changed. It saw the container was already running and reported, OK, skipping the restart. The containers kept running the old config. The Docker Container module did not detect changes in environment variables or command because the comparisons parameter was omitted, causing the module to report OK, even when vars changed. The fix is to add the comparisons parameter to the Docker Container module. By specifying which attributes to compare, like cmd, env, and labels, the module will detect changes and trigger a restart. Alternatively, use a handler that restarts the container only when a configuration file changes. This ensures containers are updated without unnecessary restarts. This is the exact mistake from the incident. The restart, yes parameter only triggers a restart if the container already exists and is running, but without comparisons, the module doesn't know that the config changed. Always set comparisons to detect changes. Without the comparisons parameter, the module won't detect changes in environment variables or command. It will report, OK, even if you changed vars. Always set comparisons for production to ensure updates are applied. Docker networks are immutable after creation. If you try to change parameters like attachable, the module will not update the network. It will just report OK. You must delete and recreate the network to apply changes. When using Docker Compose v2, environment variables from Ansible are not automatically passed to the Compose file. You must set them explicitly using the environment parameter of the task or use Ansible templates to render the Compose file before deploying. If the Docker Python software development kit is not installed on the target host, the Docker Container module will fail with no module named Docker. Always include a pip task to install the software development kit after installing Docker itself. If your Docker file uses copy with files that don't exist in the build context, the build will fail. Always verify that all required files are present in the build context directory before running the playbook. Even with no log on the task, some modules may leak secrets in error messages. Always set no log, Yes on tasks that handle passwords, API keys, or any sensitive data. Use Ansible Vault for variable encryption. The article uses Community Docker 3.4.0 and Docker Python Software Development Kit 6.1.0. However, as of early 2025, Community Docker 3x requires Docker Software Development Kit equals 7.0.0. Using Software Development Kit 6.1.0 with collection 3.4.0 may cause module failures. Always check the collection's meta/runtime (IML) for exact Software Development Kit version requirements. The article mentions using state, absent then state, started for image updates, but this causes downtime. A better pattern is to use Docker container info to compare the current image and conditionally recreate only when needed, minimizing disruption. The article notes that networks are immutable after creation, but doesn't emphasize that this can cause silent failures in CI/CD. If a network's IPAM config or driver changes, the module reports OK without updating. Always use a unique network name per deployment version or explicitly delete and recreate networks when parameters change. To debug Docker issues, first check container info using the Docker container info module. Use ad hoc commands to test connectivity and verify Docker is running. Enable verbose output in Ansible to see module details. For compose files, validate syntax with docker-compose config. Let's run through some common interview questions. How do you ensure idempotency with Docker container? Use comparisons parameter and Docker container info. What is the difference between Docker Compose v2 and raw Docker Compose? Module is idempotent but limited. Raw is flexible but not idempotent. How do you handle secrets in Ansible Docker? Use Ansible Vault, Nolog, and Docker Login for registry auth. And a few frequently asked questions. What is Community Docker? Ansible collection for managing Docker resources idempotently. How to install Community Docker? Ansible Galaxy collection install Community Docker 3.4.0. What Python package is required? Docker Software Development Kit for Python on target hosts. Let's recap the key takeaways. Install and pin Community Docker version. Always set comparisons on Docker container. Use Docker Compose V for simple stacks. Bootstrap Docker hosts with Software Development Kit install. Ready to go deeper? Up next, Ansible in CI/CD pipelines, then Ansible performance tuning, then Ansible linting and testing with Molecule, and Ansible Windows automation. Find them all at TheCodeForge.io. Thanks for watching. The full article and code examples are covered in detail at TheCodeForge.io.